Ye Salam TV.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Dear viewer of Salam TV, we want to welcome you once again to yet another episode of the Alhidaayah show. My name is Muhammad Sekalala. I'm the host for the show, and in this show we look at Islam and science, scientific aspects that influence and impact on us as Muslims. Today is the 12th day of the first month of Islam, Muharram, in the new year 1447, corresponding to the 7th day of July 2025. We want to thank Allah for the gift of life, and then also celebrate with those that have so far earned rewards of the 8 days of fasting that started on Thursday and should end on this Thursday, because Thursday was the normal day of fasting, and then the days that followed had the 10th day of Ashura, and then these other days that are coming on. So we ask Allah that He accepts your ibadat, and the rest of us that have not been in position to do the same because of health complications, we pray that Allah also rewards you for the other acts of worship that you've done. Of course, in this show we have late covering miracles of the human body. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran tells us to contemplate and try to visualize different things that help us understand Him better. And in the Quran, Surah Al-Dhariyah chapter 51, He says, وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ, that indeed on your own selves you also have signs that should help you understand Allah better. So we've looked at different parts of our bodies, and today inshallah we want to look at another one. Last week we had the human eye. We were here with Dr. Kainaki Abubakar. Those who were with us in the show, we hope you benefited a lot. We also share the contact in case you need to have a further consultation. Today inshallah we are going again to continue with the miracles of the human body. Today we want to look at the human tongue as another interesting organ or part of our bodies. So to help us go through this, we have our guest, Mr. Hamza Sekalima, whom I'm going to request to say salam to us, then we start, inshallah.
Now, dear viewers, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us life and enabling us to come here to contemplate about our surroundings, about the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to build our iman. Essentially, the whole essence of being in this world is to attain iman, because that's what Allah wants from us. The rest are just additions. So every inch you move towards attaining knowledge, you attain a greater understanding of Allah's creation and a greater faith. Okay. So we pray to Allah to give us the benefit expected from this interaction.
Thank you very much, our dear guest. So viewer, we want to remind that in case you missed out on the earlier shows, just go to Salam or to the YouTube page, type Salam and then Alhidaayah. You'll be getting a recap of the shows that we have covered in the past. So Mr. Sekalema, first things first, we always look at the interesting facts about these organs that we select. So what is interesting about the human tongue?
Now, one thing that we should realize is that the human tongue, and indeed the tongues of other creatures that tend to require a lot of testing, differs a bit from the tongues of, for example, snakes.
Snakes, yes.
Now you see, when a snake is eating, it doesn't need to test what it is eating.
Okay.
Because it swallows the entire rat. So there is really nothing there to test. You are essentially just swallowing the entire food that you are taking. So you will see therefore that the tongues of snakes are not designed like the way our tongues are. For them, they are again adapted for a totally different purpose. For them, they use the tongue as a sensor So it is. So for them, they have very poor eyesight, but their tongues are very accurate in pinpointing smell, chemical composition, and etc.
Okay.
But in the case of our tongues, we should remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created human beings in an interesting way. We human beings eat for entertainment.
Yes, yes, we noted that in the earlier shows.
So the other creatures, for them, they don't need, they don't eat for entertainment. Be it a lion, be it any other creature, for as long as it is not hungry, it does not pursue eating. Eating is something you do only for purposes of sustaining life. So if you're not hungry, you don't eat. Okay. But we human beings eat as a form of entertainment, and that's why Allah has put the eating as part of life in Jannah. So you see, they promise you honey, they promise you, meaning eating is an integral part of human beings as a form of entertaining themselves. So meaning our tongue must be able to essentially interact with a lot of tastes in order for us to attain that particular aspect of eating. So a few things about this tongue of ours. Number one, this tongue, externally you see it as a simple organ, just some piece of flesh, but it has 8 interwoven muscles. So the muscles are interwoven more of like the way you see these
weaving a basket.
So you see the way the basket is constructed out of that
spider web.
So you interweave and you finally get one continuous material, but in actual sense at the bottom there are other smaller things that are interlaced.
Yes, yes.
So the tongue has 8 muscles. These 8 muscles are interweaved in order to create the strongest and most flexible muscle in the body relative to the size. So if you look at the tongue, and interestingly, Allah has also enabled us to adjust its strength. So this is a graphic to show us just a few parts. Usually we don't want to go into very heavy biological terms. We just want the person to realize that this is what we are talking about. There are things like the foliate, the circumambulate. These are all medical terms that we may not want to go into. All we want is our viewer to know that this is the tongue and this is the general structure. Okay. So the 8 muscles allow us to either make our tongues hard or to make them soft.
Yes.
So you can see a very interesting design that Allah has put there.
Okay.
So relative to its size within the body, it is the strongest
part of
the strongest muscle. Of course, we have many muscles, but the strongest in terms of size is the tongue. It has those 8 interwoven muscles, and they allow us to do many things. Tongues of other creatures, like for example the cats, because they eat meat in its fresh form, for them their surface is rough. It is not like ours. The tongue is very smooth.
Very smooth, yes.
But in case have you ever been licked by a cow?
No. I can't even imagine getting closer to it.
You've never been licked. Now you see that cow, because it has to pick grass.
Yes.
It also has a very rough tongue. If you ever get licked by a cow, you'll really feel that there are some rough tongues, but for us, our tongue is very smooth.
Very smooth.
Its services do not include plucking flesh off bones and etc. So the muscles are there, and the tongue can become as hard as a stick, or it can become as easy to move around. Allah has given it a very unique and interesting,
so it is very flexible
design. So it allows for flexibility, and it also allows for strength. And that is another very good way of Allah engineering, because you would have possibly made it rigid, just some tough thing like this, or you'd have made it very flexible and unable to be hard. But we use it for various purposes. Some of them require it to be hard, and some of it require it to be soft, and it is all because of these interwoven muscles. Tabarakallahu ahsanul khaliqin. Now, the other interesting thing about the tongue is that just like we have fingerprints, the human beings, their tongues are unique. There are no two people with the same tongue appearance. So the tongue is also a signature of a human being. So you can even call it a tongue print if you want. So primarily, the tongue is unique. Each and every one of us has a different design for the tongue. Of course, the differences are not very radical that you can see them from outside, but in case you looked at it very closely, each one has a very particular structure of the tongue. Now, the other interesting thing about this tongue is that you see on the surface of the tongue, in order for you to sense that this is sweet, this is sour, this is it is there are what we call taste buds, some small sensors on the tongue. And interestingly, those taste buds keep regenerating every 10 to 14 days. Meaning the taste buds you had last month are not the ones you are having this month.
This month, yes.
And that's why they are telling us that because of this very rapid regeneration, if you get burnt on the tongue, you tend to heal quite quickly because the cells regenerate very fast. So you can see that if you, in case you took something very hot and it burnt you, there's a way the tongue feels very weird. Very weird. But after
some sharp pain you feel.
There's some, and it even loses sensitivity once it gets burnt. But Allah keeps rejuvenating, and
after like 30 to 40 minutes,
you find you no longer feel the pain. The body is already regenerating a totally new set of cells. And
maybe before we
the ones we call the test buds.
I don't know that will take us into the discussion on the different tests we have, because I remember in our basic science you had the sour, sweet, then something.
We are going to get to that.
Okay.
So interestingly, as we grow older, the taste buds reduce. Now children have 10,000.
Oh wow.
But as we grow older, they reduce to 5,000. So it means that small child you are seeing there has twice the number of taste buds that you have
than the adults.
Possibly we may contemplate, why does Allah give the child very many taste buds, yet in actual sense the child is only taking milk, so you don't imagine that it has a lot of applications. Now you realize that when human beings are growing up, they tend to investigate using their tongues.
Yes.
If you give a small child anything, where does it put the thing?
In the mouth.
It puts in the mouth. So the primary investigative tool for the child is the mouth. It keeps it. That's the only way for it. It can do a very quick investigation about something, and possibly that is why Nabiyuna Musa, alayhi salatu wasalam. You know the story of Nabiyuna Musa and his tongue.
Yes.
So Nabiyuna Musa alayhi salatu wasalam grew up. He was picked. Of course, Allah inspired the mother. The mother threw him into the river that passes through Fir'aun's territory to save him from being killed. And Asya, the wife of Fir'aun, picked him and took him to the palace.
Yes.
Now, as Musa was growing, he would do things that would annoy
the Fir'aun, yes, the king.
For example, he would keep calling him Kafir. Kafir is a person who denies faith. So Fir'aun got annoyed
at a very young age.
And he told his wife, this child here, an abnormal child, we may need to kill him. So a day came when he became very angry and was determined to kill the boy. Then Asya told him, this is just a small boy, he doesn't even understand what he's saying. So Fir'aun tested Musa. There was a date and a live coal, some hot coal. So the test was, should Musa grab the date? It means he's understanding very well, and he should be able to, he knows what he's doing, so he needs to be killed. So it is reported that Musa actually took his hand
to the date.
Towards the date. And of course it would be a death sentence for him, yet he had work to do in the later period. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent an angel. The angel made Musa to pick a live coal,
yes,
and to put it into the mouth, essentially completing the entire demonstration of stupidity expected of a child. So picks it, puts it in the mouth, and it burns the tongue. So in that case, because the coal was, it did a major impact on Musa's tongue. And that's why when Musa was asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, among the things he said, so the tongue had some issues and he couldn't speak very well. But it is all about the tongue being damaged by fire. So in that case, you can see Musa had permanent damage reason simply being that the damage was beyond the surface of the tongue, it went into, so he had to suffer that kind of permanent damage. But for most of us, it is very simple. So we're saying children have 10,000 test buds on that tongue of theirs, even if it may appear smaller than yours, and for you have only about 5,000. And as you grow older, Allah even just keeps reducing until you reach a point where you don't have. Now, for those of us who really don't understand or appreciate the essence of a test, you could ask a person that is no longer able to taste what he's eating, and you will see a very big problem.
Oh, wow.
The tongue warns us of potential danger in what we eat.
Yes.
Because once you take something, the taste alone will give you an indication of whether this thing should be allowed to go further, or you simply spit it out. So all these are essentially the services of the tongue.
Okay, maybe before we continue, the aspect of Prophet Musa is interesting. Can we also infer that most of the people have difficulty with speech or stammering is largely something that is that develops growing up, or they are usually born with it?
No, with the case of Musa, it was a physical defect that was caused by that burning. But things like stammering and other, those ones are largely psychological issues. And interestingly, there are very simple ways of curing it. I've seen it on some show where a person used to be a stammerer, but is now even hosting a talk show, so meaning he's no longer having a talking issue. So a young woman came and asked him about stammering, and he told her the stammering is in your head.
It's in your head, yes.
Usually, you expect that you are going to stammer, so this brain ends up triggering that stammering. So he told her, therefore, if you want to heal it, before you say anything out, repeat it to yourself 3 times. And when the young woman tried out, it worked. You could no longer even sense that she's stammering. But it usually starts with the brain, the anticipation to stammer. And also when people are with you and they expect you to stammer, there is that suspense they put whenever you are talking. They worsen the situation, and that is what causes stammering.
But interestingly, people who stammer in ordinary speech, you find when they are reciting the Quran,
they do not stammer, because in that case, the tension, because like I have said, when you are reading Quran, you are not picking from your head. You are essentially picking from what you are seeing. So in that case, you don't expect anything new. You are seeing the words, simply pronounce whatever you are pronouncing. But when you are talking on your own, you tend to have that anticipation that I'm about to stammer. Even the one looking at you is already showing signs that you are about to fail to talk. So it exaggerates the situation, and people end up stammering.
Okay, thank you very much. So
the next interesting thing, they are what we call super testers.
Super testers. I think that will be the last item.
Now, super testers are people that have an acute sense of taste. They can test the smallest difference in a sweetness, or the smallest difference in sourness or whatever.
I hope that is not for people who are good at tasting dishes. Because I'm told even in hotels and restaurants there are professional testers.
Because you need someone who really can detect that there is too much salt. There's some unique salty feeling in this food.
I think that would be the best job for us Ugandans.
But interestingly, the percentage of people is very big. Around 25% of the global population are super testers. So it's not a very unique thing. 25% in Uganda, it would be like how many? 10 million.
Employers out there need to call out for adverts, for applications. Those who can test.
So it's the super testers form 25% of population. In case of Uganda, you're talking about the whole 10 million. So many of us are able to do super testing. Now,
wow.
So
super testers.
Then we conclude with the 5 basic tests.
Tests, yes.
Number 1 is the sweet.
Sweet, yes.
And the sweet will vary depending on how far the sweetness is going, but sweet is what you get in sugar, what you get in the thing. Sugar is the easiest thing.
Scientifically, is there the most sweetest thing we have? Is it honey or?
I don't know. honey is sweet, but it is
sweetest.
not only sweet. It has other things that cause it not to be
Okay,
sweet. And
so
interestingly, in Allah's creation, He never creates anything with only one taste.
One taste, yes.
You can see if you are eating a mango, you don't only feel the sweetness. There is also something that is as if it is sour. It is. So we have sweet, like in the case of sugar. Then salty, like in the case of salt, that feeling there. And all of them have their own applications. If you put sugar in food, it becomes weird. But interestingly, I've ever gone to a country, it was Malaysia, they put sugar in cocoa, in the chicken. And it tastes
Actually,
weird.
I also just a few weeks ago, I saw somebody putting pineapple in rice. I never tasted that.
Yeah, in Uganda, by the way, we don't do a lot of innovation with the food. We have our standard foods. We just eat those ones. But people manipulate. They put sugar, real sugar in the chicken. And when you eat it, you don't feel like it is a mistake. Wow. Although you feel weird if you are used to the salt environment here. Then there is bitter. Now, bitter is what you sense in red pepper. So meaning it is not necessarily salt.
I don't know. What is chigadi in Uganda? Is it aloe vera? What is it?
Yeah, that one is aloe vera.
Aloe vera. That one they give you when you have malaria.
Bitter. Bitter is not kamulari. Bitter is like what you have brought chigaji or katunguma. You know that katunguma, those were tiny. So you sense that for it is not like salt. It has that sharp, bitter taste. But
I think the best one will be the chloroquine we used to have.
But nowadays people don't take it. There is coartem and other drugs. But for those who grew up in the chloroquine era, it used to be one of those bitter drugs. So you would even get healed of malaria just because you have been warned that in a further display of science you are going to swallow chloroquine. Plus it's a very itching effect after. So you have sweet, salty, like bitter, salt. Sour. Then there is sour.
Sour.
By the way, sour is the chigaji.
I think I should.
Then the bitter is the kamulari.
Kamulari, yes.
Essentially a red pepper. Then there is a taste here that I've never seen. They call it umami.
Have you
ever heard of umami?
Never heard of that as well. Okay. So
interestingly, they are saying that there is even a test for water.
Tasteless.
Usually when we are defining water, we imagine that it is tasteless. But it seems it is not 100% tasteless. There's a certain taste which you can detect, and you say this is now water. So it has a unique one, and Allah has made it some very big solvent. It dissolves many things.
Let's continue with that after the break. And dear viewer, we are looking at miracles of the human body and the tongue specifically. So we are ending on a note where we are looking at those tests that we have grown up knowing. I think P4 science and then senior 3 biology, which are compulsory fields of study in the lower educational system. You find that those tests we have been told about. So inshallah, after the break, we shall be having further discussion of the same.
Eno ye Salam TV.
1, 2, Timwana. Sika. Hey, the tuja kweta twetu. Moche. Mr. Boss.
I am so excited to be here in Kobalo, Arua. We've gotten our second winner from this place. All he had to do was to download the caller tune. He's a young gentleman. Convincing him that he's the actual winner was actually not easy.
I never believed in calls that could come to me anyhow because I was always a lot of scammers. But later when I confirmed, it was true. And I'm really happy I have received my bag.
All you have to do is dial *170 *12 hash and download the caller tune. Digida with MTN caller tunes. Owangule.
wanted to spend the rest of my life with you. Tell you every morning how much I love you.
Sonia is not what you think she is.
What is this funny still doing here? I will leave if Linda wants me to leave.
As the eldest son of this family, I need a son of my own.
You're under arrest for the disappearance of George Menya.
I'm innocent, you know that!
I'm one of the scientists now doing research on plastic technology recycling, where we can be able to produce other products from plastic waste. For example, we are trying to develop a plastic tile with sand plastic tile, that it is unbreakable, it can be shifted from one roof to another. So this is a project we are working on. It's our initiative as Kazire Group of trying to reduce waste from the environment. Brothers and sisters, Taso Butonde for a better Uganda.
This message is brought to you by National Environment Management Authority, Kampala Capital City Authority, Vivo Energy, Airco, Pepsi, Stanbic Bank and NBS TV. Better steady, be better.
I believe almost all of us have gone through problems with conmen, especially on mobile phones. Any network, somebody will call you asking for your PIN, somebody will call you asking for anything, somebody will call you with a problem. All I'm telling you is as we advance in these technology times, I just want you to be steady and be better.
In partnership with Uganda Communications Commission and NBS.
Okulinyisa omutindo gwa Afro Mobile. Eno yengeri joyinza okuza obujja omutindo gwa Afro Mobile yo. Funa app ya Afro Mobile okuva ku mukutu gwa Google Store oba App Store oba ku mutimbagano gwa www.afromobile.com. Londako forgotten password. Tekamu account yo eya Afro Mobile ozebujja pin code yo. Ojja kufuna obubaka ku email yo okuli ne code empya. Bw'oteekamu code eyo olwo pin yo empya ekkirizibwe. Afro Mobile, emboozi za Africa ezannamaddala.
Afro. Eno ye Salam TV.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillahi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Dear viewer of Salam TV, we welcome you back from that short break. This is the Alhidaayah show. We are looking at Islam and science as the thematic area, and then the topic we are covering is miraculous, all the miracles of the human body and the tongue specifically. So before we went in for the break, we noted that the tongue is it's made up of 8 interwoven muscles that give it the possibility of being soft or hard. And then we ended on a note where we are looking at the tastes that we all grew up knowing: the sweet taste, the salty, the bitter, the sour, and the fifth one, which our guest has shared with us, is the umami taste, which I think we can all try to read further on the same. So, Mr. Hamza, as we come back for the second part of the show, we want our viewers to again appreciate the fact that the tongue is one of, it has got so many functions. Foremost is dhikrullah, remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which inshallah will be sharing us as we go. Do we have interesting facts that we can conclude on before we go into the functionality, especially in terms of worship?
By the way, it is very interesting that the tongue is also a critical part of speech. Actually, for languages like Arabic, there's even a whole course on what we call makharij and khuruf, meaning the tongue essentially moves around and causes us to speak and be able to generate specific sounds like and all the others. So we see that the tongue is involved in that.
Okay, mashallah, yes. Facts as we go into the functionality.
The next fact is what we call tongue rolling.
Tongue rolling.
Can you roll your tongue? Tongue rolling is this. You see that?
Yes.
Where you make the tongue to form a semicircle. Now, many people tend to believe that tongue rolling is genetic, meaning if your father was never able to tongue roll, however much you'll try, you can't tongue roll. Can you tongue roll? So for you it's very simple. Rolling the tongue is very hard for some people. It simply remains flat. But I understand if you undergo some practice, especially if you start young enough, you can be able to roll the tongue. So you can see there are some people that are able to form that semicircle in the tongue very quickly, and there are others who simply can't. The tongue just remains.
Does it have any healthy benefit?
It's just a trait that people can do, and others are simply unable to do it.
Okay.
It does not have any major impact on us as human beings. Cleaning.
Cleaning the tongue.
The tongue's surface is covered in tiny bumps, those small things there. And they help to clean food debris from the teeth. Now you realize that when we are eating, you eat and that food remains within the teeth. Now you'll wonder, there are creatures like crocodiles, for example. For them, they don't worry about food remaining in their teeth.
Of course.
Also, the spaces within the teeth are very large. Nothing really can remain there. But for us as human beings, what we eat, first of all, the variety itself.
Yes.
Human beings are called omnivorous, essentially able to eat anything. We can eat grass, we can eat meat, we can eat. So it means within your mouth, you are putting there a lot of all kinds of food, and the food partially sticks within
the teeth, the
areas of the teeth. Now, on your tongue, there are those small bumps you are seeing there. So those bumps, the level of roughness differs from one creature to another depending on the kind of effect you wanted the tongue to do. Remember I warned you about the cow's tongue? Because it is chewing grass, it tends to pull the grass, so it has a very rough surface. Other creatures like cats, the lions and etc., for them, the tongue has to pull meat from bones and other things of other animals, and moreover that meat is raw. It is not like the way we first cook it, then you can easily drag it off. So in that case, they also have rough tongues with the purpose that it can simply leak blood and other things off. So even you have those small, they call them papillae, the biologists. And the purpose is tongue moves around within your mouth between the teeth, and it removes some of the unnecessary debris. Of course, part of it remains. That's why we do the brushing business. But largely, the tongue will clean a very large part of what would be remaining permanently in your mouth.
Mashallah. Okay, so
the next interesting fact is speech. They are saying the tongue is able to produce over 90 different speech sounds. So you can see therefore that we are able to speak many languages. You are Muganda, you have your own sounds. You also speak Arabic. You can also speak Lusonga. They also have some unique sounds. So our tongues are able to formulate up to 90 speech sounds.
Does it mean it is the maximum number of
I think they could be even more, because essentially but the core sounds that we human beings use for speech, of course depending on the language, you'll find they differ. I had my postgraduate studies in Bangladesh, and one of the most difficult thing for them was the alphabet. Actually, they made it even a whole challenge for the Bangladeshi students. Whoever can complete their alphabet, the Bangladeshi alphabet, none could do it. Only one person pulled off like half, and they were all jubilating and saying he has achieved a major feat. So the sounds are, first of all, very many. They are like 30 plus, and they vary in very small ways. So, so in that case, so you can see that those ones are now 30, but the core sounds that primarily form human languages are not very many. But each language tends to have, if you look at languages of people in Southern Africa, especially South Africa, Zambia, there is a certain sound they when they are writing it, they write it as NH.
The nga sound.
It is not like that. It is as if you do what is called kokontla in Luganda. So for them it is part of a normal language, like the way you speak your Luganda. For them, many times they have to make that sound, and it's very unique. Even when they are writing it, they nearly fail to write it. So there are 90 different sounds that the tongue allows you to generate just by manipulation. And for Arabic, like we said, for them they even have a specific area for each letter, meaning you don't just pronounce things. They will tell you da starts from here, move the tongue to the left, or ha, you move the tongue up like this. So when you fail in the makharij, the letters will simply not come out. You'll struggle for a whole year, yet when you know where each sound comes from, you simply manipulate the tongue and of course the throat, and you're able to generate all this speech power.
MashaAllah. Now, so thank you very much for those interesting facts about the human tongue. We want to hope and assume that our viewers are following us, and we are looking at the miracles of the human body, which is as Allah has commanded us in the Holy Quran. So we are looking at the human tongue today. So going forward, we have about 15 minutes to end the show. Can you look at some of the, apart from speech function and the cleaning function, I think you've given us, what could be the, in biology we call it adaptation, is it? No. Adaptation is what gives it the ability to perform a function. So
like those bumps, they allow it to do the cleaning.
Yes, yes. So what other functions apart from the speech and then the cleaning can we?
Of course, the tongue also helps us in digestion. Remember, when we human beings are eating, we essentially start by chewing that food within the mouth. But the human chewing is more complex than other creatures, because other creatures, actually, for them, they just nya, 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 and they swallow.
They swallow, yes.
Some even don't chew.
Yes.
Like those crocodiles and their colleagues. For them, chewing is irrelevant.
Okay.
But now, for the human tongue, you do a lot of chewing in order to ensure that the food is just totally reduced to a paste before you can swallow it.
Okay.
Now, for you to achieve that chewing, remember the teeth are rigid. The teeth don't move around.
Yes.
So it is now only the tongue to keep moving this food until it becomes that paste that you want. If we didn't have a tongue, the eating would become extremely difficult. We would have to behave like those crocodiles. You see, when it is eating, it simply has to shake the mouth in order to move the food. It can't move the food by itself using the tongue. So you don't see that it is just moving whatever it's eating. It has to just keep throwing the mouth up in order to allow the food to move. So in case we didn't have the tongue, we would end up with all this difficulty. You would have to keep moving your mouth around in order to move the food from one unit to another. But the tongue will distribute, and it even allows you to sense whether the food you are eating is actually
now soft.
Otherwise, if you didn't have its capacity to judge, usually you don't look into your mouth when you are eating. You don't say, let me see in the mirror, is the food ready for swallowing? No, you just sense it with the tongue, and it tells you, this one is now soft enough, and you can see it is all automatic. We don't really do a lot of thinking when we are eating. We simply do that. So very important purpose there. Then two, remember, the human digestion starts from the mouth itself. And within that mouth, part of digestion is mixing this food with the saliva.
So if you didn't have something that can manipulate the food heavily within the mouth, you do not have that mixture coming out very well. You'd have the saliva maybe in one part of the food and in other parts it's not there.
And what is interesting, even if you don't have water and you have the saliva with you, I think you can't even have your good meal. I think it explains why even the water, even if it comes at the end of the meal,
you don't mind because there is enough minimum natural water that is within your mouth. So
maybe I think
very important.
We shall have to look at the saliva in detail because it seems that it's another interesting aspect of the human mouth.
Yeah, the gland and what it does for us, possibly, inshallah.
It is something very interesting. Then dhikrullah, I think, is something else we can also.
Dhikr is essentially speech, only that you are talking of speech in terms of particular words.
Yes.
But remember that dhikrullah within the Sharia is not merely saying subhanallah wa alhamdulillah. There is also what we call remembering Allah. When you are going to perform a particular action, for example, you are going to enter into a house, you are going to enter into a masjid, you are walking out of the house. Usually what they refer to as remembering Allah is that thinking and consciousness that this action has been possibly commanded of me from Allah, so I need to remember him. And that's why for to trigger more contemplation, the Prophet ﷺ has given us particular words for each of these actions. When you are going to sleep, Bismika, Allahumma ahya wa amut. When you are going to eat, Bismillah. So these words are put there to cause you to think a bit further. This food that you are eating, many people are not having it. Others are able to eat, but they can't even swallow, etc. So the element of dhikr there, apart from the fact that we manifest the fact that I have thought about Allah by uttering these words, we should know that dhikr does not just end with these things that you speak out. It starts with the internal thought process of remembering that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control of your entire facility. Then you speak the words. The words are just a conclusion of the entire dhikrullah.
Okay, thank you very much. Dear viewer, we are looking at Islam and science, and then specifically miracles of the human body and the human tongue, specifically as the organ of the human body. So as we are coming towards the end of the show, I want you to help us appreciate that the tongue is one of those blessings and favors of Allah, and that there are also defects that Allah perhaps has given to some people. And
some people regarding the tongue.
Yeah, defects such as somebody who has a normal tongue perhaps could
appreciate that it is not some automatic thing, that tongue that you have and it is able to sense and to do things. You need to be aware of. Maybe before we go to the defects, there are other interesting things about this tongue of ours. You see, within the mouth, there is bacteria. And that bacteria is partially what causes our teeth to get a problem. But what happens is that the tongue distributes saliva, and saliva has some antibacterial effect into the teeth. Otherwise, if the teeth were not protected by that saliva, we would keep having to possibly remove or having to lose our teeth. But the bacteria is there, and it also serves a purpose, because a person may say again, why are we having bacteria in our mouth? It has a purpose. They keep the mouth in that state. Otherwise, if the mouth dried up totally, we saw something about the throat, you would have a lot of problems. So the tongue will also help you to distribute that bacteria, to keep your mouth in a fairly stable form. Then the tongue will also help us in removing the dead skin from the mouth, because you know that everywhere there is dead skin, but within your mouth you don't do it by yourself. The tongue helps you in performing that kind of. So now a few defects that could do. Now the first one is a very complicated word, but they refer to it as a tongue tie.
Tongue tie, yes.
Now in this case it means the tongue is either too short or it is unable to move effectively within the mouth. So it is a defect. So in this case, in case a child is born with this kind of problem, the tongue is either too short or it's not moving efficiently, the child will end up unable to breastfeed properly. Because remember that the tongue is the one that does nearly 90% of the entire breastfeeding operation. It has to squeeze the teeth of the mother and etc. So you'll find that as one of them. And usually there's a technical word, but I don't usually want to go into technical words because even our viewer will not remember them.
Of course.
So we prefer the simple English word, the tongue tie. So the tongue is not moving efficiently, or the tongue is essentially too short. So they usually treat it with a minor surgical operation, and they remove that anomaly. Otherwise, if you are unable to breastfeed properly, you are in big problems. Of course, we do have solutions.
What is that in Uganda? Can you maybe try to put
tongue tie? I don't know how it is called.
Because
maybe
there's some time I had some parents that say that is it when the child has there's a way they call it in Uganda, and I think it is below the tongue, so they have
akanyata.
I think it's akanyata. Is it what you're talking
by
about?
the way, I think that is what because that kanyata is essentially that part of the tongue which is at the bottom. I think it becomes now too long, and it causes a large, because the tongue is like this, the lower part is hinged like this. So if the hinge is starting too early here, the tongue ends up being short.
So the
operation is to cut out that part and allow the tongue to move the way. Then there is also another situation where you have an abnormally large tongue, maybe like that of a dog. Dogs have extremely large tongues. But each one has a purpose. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala measures everything, and gives every creature the correct measure. The snake's tongue is just a small line like this, because it does not need to taste anything or etc. But its job is put it out, sense chemicals in the air, return it back, and report what you have sensed. So abnormally large tongue comes in disorders. There's what we call Down syndrome. Usually these Americans tend to put their names on the diseases they discover. So the disease ends up carrying the person's name. So those details that cause the tongue to become very large. And it causes now problems with the breathing. Of course, it causes problems with the speech. And in that case, you'll have a bit of a problem. There is also what we call cleft tongue. Cleft tongue, their tongue has some space in the middle, and it resembles that of a snake, because primarily the human tongue is supposed to be a very clear flat
think it is to do with the lips. Also the tongue also has the issue.
They are saying even the tongue can easily have, and it ends up appearing like that of a snake. So in that case, we end up with the cleft tongue.
So thank you very much for the discussion. Viewer, we would love very much to have an extended discussion, but of course time cannot allow us. Maybe in a minute or two. There are cases where somebody's tongue, even if they brush, it continues having that force. Is it related to either a disease or
the bad breath?
A bad breath. Is it also another defect that is, or it is just
now here they are saying that a very large number of the bacteria that are within the mouth, they reside on the tongue. And possibly that is the cause of bad breath. But some forms of bad breath are indicated as coming from the stomach and not necessarily the mouth. Because if you have brushed the mouth, primarily you have removed whatever causes it. But in case it is coming from away from the wherever you are trying to brush, and it's coming possibly from the inside, in that case it means you really don't have much of a control. So you are not going to brush inside there.
So it has
for those that have it chronic and it's really staying on, even if you try to brush, many times it's not really coming directly from the mouth. It's coming from an interior part. So those are some of the critical things about the tongue. Of course, you can look it up and see a lot more detail. Here we do more of triggering your thought, so that you can be able to appreciate that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. Just imagine, for each organ we come here and cover for a whole hour, we discuss. They are all on you, and all that Allah wants from you is simply to say Allahu Akbar and to worship Him, So we should be able to be appreciative. Everything that you see on your body, it can go berserk and cause a lot of problems to you. But ultimately, Allah has given them to us, and He allows them to work for us in ways that we don't have much of a control over.
Thank you very much. So dear viewer, we want to thank our guest very much for making it time to come and share with us. We also want to thank you for keeping it Salam TV for the full 1 hour that we always have this show on Monday. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward you and make the information that we have heard and viewed as well as a matter of benefit to us, such that we become better worshippers. I want to remind you that tomorrow the full moon days or the white days begin. Those who can fast kindly do the fasting tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday. Inshallah, there is a lot of benefit and reward that Allah has placed in those who fast. And secondly, if you've missed out on some parts of the show, kindly go to this YouTube page, type Salam, then Alhidaayah. You'll be having a recap of the same. Of course, you can view, like, and share with your colleagues. And then those comments, you can always put them in the comment section. We can pick them up and then try to make additions or clarifications in case there are. Otherwise, till next time, I remain Muhammad Sekalala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Eno, yes, salam.